Tonight we begin with the strange and wonderful creatures of ancient Greek myth. Not just the heroes and the gods, but the things that lurked in the shadows, swam in the deepest seas, and haunted the wild places of the world. The beings that made the ancient world a place of constant, beautiful danger. Imagine the dense, dark silence of a primordial forest where sunlight struggles to pierce the canopy of ancient oaks. The air is thick with the scent of damp earth, pine resin, and something else, something musky and wild. You hear a twig snap, too heavy for a deer, too deliberate for a falling branch. From the corner of your eye, a shape moves between the trees, neither man nor beast, but something fluid and ancient. Or picture the endless wine-dark sea at twilight, the way the water seems to breathe, a vast, living entity. A shimmering, scaled arm might break the surface for just a moment, fingers webbed, and pale, before vanishing into the depths, leaving only a single iridescent bubble popping on the waves. You could almost feel the salt spray on your skin, hear the hypnotic lap of water against a rocky shore, and sense the immense, unknowable life moving just beneath. This is the world we're stepping into tonight. A world where the map was filled with "Here be monsters," and every shadow held a story. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what we do here. And let me know in the comments where you retuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Congratulations, you've just been born into the very first seconds of existence, according to the Greeks. There is no light, no land, no up or down. There is only chaos. And no, not chaos in the modern sense of messy desks and tangled headphones. This is chaos as a primordial void, a formless, aping nothingness that is also, paradoxically, a something. It's the cosmic potential for everything, the ultimate blank canvas, but a canvas that's alive and seething with raw, unformed power. It's not empty. It's pregnant. It's the breath before the first word, the silence before the first note of a symphony that will eventually include thunder, ocean waves, and the whispers of nymphs. There are no stars yet to navigate by, no ground beneath your feet, just an infinite, silent, and profoundly lonely potential. You are adrift in the birthplace of reality, and it is utterly, terrifyingly quiet. This isn't a peaceful quiet. It's the quiet of a held breath, the anticipation of a storm that hasn't broken. It's the kind of silence that presses in on your eardrums, a physical weight. If you could hear anything, it would be the faint, low thrum of existence itself, waiting to be shaped. This is where it all begins. Not with a bang, not with a kindly old man sketching planets on a drawing board, but with this formless, yawning chasm of possibility. From this nothing everything, the first beings will emerge. Not gods as we think of them later, with personalities and petty squabbles and elaborate family trees. These are the fundamental forces of the universe, given consciousness. The first to stir from the soup of chaos is Gaia, the Earth, but she isn't a planet yet. She is the idea of the solid, the stable, the reliable. She is the feeling of cool soil under your bare feet, the immense, patient strength of a mountain range, the deep, dark fertility of the land that will eventually bear all life. She emerges fully formed, a vast maternal presence, a foundation in the void. She is the ground of all being, literally. And she doesn't emerge alone. From that same silent void comes Tartarus. If Gaia is the solid ground, Tartarus is the profound, terrifying depth beneath it. He is not just a place, but a being, the embodiment of the underworld. The abyss used as a dungeon of torment later, but now simply the deep, dark opposite of Gaia's rising solidity. He is the chill that seeps from ancient cave walls, the gravitational pull towards a center so dense and dark that not even light can escape the idea of it. Then From the same mysterious process comes Eros, not the chubby, mischievous Cupid of Roman parties, but the original Eros, the force of procreation, the irresistible urge of attraction that brings order out of chaos. He is the cosmic glue, the desire that will cause elements to combine, beings to come together, and life to spring forth. He is the reason anything happens at all. After Eros comes Erebus, darkness, and Nyx, night. Erebus is the deep, primeval darkness of the underworld, the very substance of shadow. Nyx is the night itself, a shrouded, majestic figure who brings the curtain of rest and mystery to the cosmos. They are partners, inseparable, the necessary counterbalance to the light that hasn't even been created yet. From Nyx and Erebus, a host of abstract and often gloomy beings are born, each a personification of a fundamental aspect of existence. Their children include Ether, the bright, upper air the gods breathe, and Hemera, the day, who will cycle with their mother Nyx. Continuing on from that first violent act of rebellion, the cosmos now has a new ruler, Cronus, and a definitive shape sky above, earth below, and a dark chasm between them. But the world is still young, raw, and populated by beings of immense, primal power. The age of the Titans has begun, and with it, the birth of the first true monsters, creatures so formidable and strange, they would become the stuff of nightmare and legend for millennia to come. Let's start with the ones who started it all, the very reason Gaia sought her sickle-wielding avenger, the Hecatonchires and the Cyclopes. Remember them? Pushed back into the earth, imprisoned in Tartarus by their fearful father, Uranus. Well, with Cronus now in charge, you'd think they'd get a pardon, a chance to stretch their 100 arms and breathe the free air. Think again. Cronus, paranoid and all too aware of his father's curse, that he too would be overthrown by his own child, looks at these monstrous older siblings and doesn't to see family. He sees a threat. So, in a move that would make any family therapist weep, he drags them right back into the gloomy pit of Tartarus and posts a dragon, a massive beast named Camp, as their jailer. So there they remain, Cottus, Rhyrios, and Gyges, the 100-handed ones. Try to picture them. Not just as big guys with extra limbs, but as walking natural disasters. Each has 50 heads and 100 arms. When they move, it's not like a person walking. It's like a landslide given consciousness, a symphony of coordinated chaos. Imagine the sound not of footsteps, but of 100 palms slapping the ground in near unison, a low rhythmic thunder that vibrates up through the stone of Tartarus itself. Their voices are not one voice, but a chorus of 50, a cacophony of deep rumbles and higher-pitched echoes all speaking the same thought, a thought that is mostly, understandably, rage. They are the embodiment of raw, untamed force, the power to hurl not one, not 10, but 100 mountains at once. They are so strong that their very presence warps the space around them. The air in Tartarus feels thicker, heavier, pressed down by the potential of their anger. And they are stuck there in the dark, for ages their multiple eyes, glowing like a field of dim embers in the perpetual twilight plotting. Nothing because there is nothing to plot, only a deep simmering resentment that becomes as much a part of the underworld as the rock itself. Then you have their brothers, the Cyclopes, Brontes, thunder, Sterops, lightning, and Arges, bright. Again, forget the later shepherd Cyclopes like Polyphemus, who gets outsmarted by Odysseus. These are the originals, and they are not simple brutes. They are master smiths, artisans of the elemental forces. Each has a single great eye in the middle of his forehead, an eye that doesn't just see, but perceives the fundamental structures of metal and stone, the hidden veins of power within the earth. That eye glows with the fierce, concentrated light of a forge, casting a single piercing beam that cuts through the shadows of their workshop. And what a workshop it is! Imagine a cavern deep beneath the world, not a dank prison, but a vast, fiery cathedral. The air smells of ozone and hot metal, of sulfur and immense heat. The only light comes from colossal forges, pits of molten rock that bubble and spit, and from the sparks that fly when their great hammers strike adamantine on anvils the size of small hills. The sound is relentless, a deafening rhythmic clang. Clang, clang that echoes through the subterranean chambers, a heartbeat for the world above. This is where the weapons of the gods are born. It is the Cyclopes who will later craft Zeus's thunderbolts, Hades' helmet of invisibility, and Poseidon's earth-shaking trident. But for now, under Cronus' rule, they are also prisoners, their creative genius wasted in the dark, their hammers beating out a rhythm of frustration. They are forces of industry and creation, locked away by fear. This is the first lesson in the world of Greek monsters. Often, the most terrifying beings are not evil, but misunderstood forces of nature, imprisoned by those who fear their power. While Cronus busies himself with ruling the cosmos, and more urgently, trying to avoid that pesky prophecy, he also starts his own family with his sister, the Titaness Rhea, and together they have children who will become the next generation of Olympian gods: Hestia, Demeter, Hera, Hades, and Poseidon. But Cronus is so terrified that one of them will overthrow him that, as each is born, he does the unthinkable. He swallows them whole. He doesn't kill them. The gods are immortal, after all. He just contains them, imprisons them inside his own divine belly. Imagine the scene. Rhea, having just gone through the immense effort of giving birth to a powerful new deity, presents the child to her husband. Instead of a proud smile, Cronus's eyes glaze over with a cold, paranoid fear. His hand, massive and powerful, reaches out, and he takes the infant god, a being of light and potential, and opens his mouth impossibly wide. There's no chewing, just a single gulping motion, and the child is gone, down into the dark, churning depths of their father's stomach, where they remain, alive but trapped, their divine light dimmed, their voices muffled by the digestive sounds of a titan. It's a different kind of Tartarus, a personal, intimate prison. The cosmos itself seems to hold its breath with each birth, a cycle of hope and horrific consumption. Rhea is, understandably, distraught. The pain of losing child after child, in this way, is a different agony from Gaia's, but just as profound. She can feel their faint presences inside Cronus, a muffled chorus of her children's power, a constant, aching reminder. When she finds herself pregnant for the 6th time, she can't bear the thought of it happening again. So, like her mother Gaia before her, she plots. She goes to Gaia and Uranus, who, despite everything, advise her. They tell her to journey to the island of Crete, to a specific hidden cave on the slopes of Mount Dicte. This is no ordinary cave. Picture it, hidden behind a waterfall that cascades with liquid silver. The entrance is shrouded by ancient gnarled olive trees. Inside, the air is cool and damp, smelling of rich earth and wild sage. The walls are not bare rock. They are covered in a strange golden honeycomb, and the constant, soft, humming buzz of bees fills the space with a lulling rhythm. This is a place of primal magic, away from the prying eyes of the Titan King. Here, in this sheltered, sacred space, Rhea gives birth to her youngest son, Zeus. His cry is not that of a normal infant. It is the sharp crack of lightning on a distant horizon, a promise of the storm to come. But she cannot linger. She knows Cronus will soon come looking, so she performs the swap. She takes a large stone, one that fits roughly in the swaddling clothes of an infant, and she wraps it tightly. She whispers a prayer over it, imbuing it with a glamour, a divine deception that makes it radiate the same life force as a newborn god. Then, with a heart full of hope and fear, she presents the bundled stone to Cronus. The Titan King, his mind clouded by paranoia, doesn't look closely. He doesn't question it. He simply performs the same horrific ritual, snatching the bundle, tipping his head back, and swallowing the stone whole. It settles in his gut with a heavy, dull thud, a weight that is both literal and symbolic. Meanwhile, the real infant Zeus is hidden away in the cave on Crete. He is not left alone. He is protected and nurtured by strange and powerful beings, the first true guardians of a mythical creature story. The Kirites, armored dancers, or in some versions, the dactyls, male figures associated with the smithing arts, stand guard at the cave's entrance. To mask the baby's cries from Cronus's all-hearing ears, they perform a wild, clashing dance. They pound their spears against their bronze shields, stomping their feet in a frenzied, rhythmic war dance. The noise is incredible, a cacophony of clanging metal and thunderous footfalls that echoes through the mountains, drowning out the sound of the future king of the gods. It's the world's first baby monitor, and it's absolutely metal. And he is fed, not by his mother, but by a she-goat named Amalthea. She is no ordinary goat. Her hide is so radiant, it seems to glow with a soft, golden light, and her horns flow with endless ambrosia and nectar, the food and drink of the gods. She is a nurturing, primal force, a creature of myth whose very being sustains the one who will change everything. In some stories, a single one of her horns later becomes the cornucopia, the horn of plenty. And sometimes, alongside her, is a gentle bee, a massive, intelligent insect that collects honey for the young god from the special flowers that grow only on the slopes of that sacred mountain. So here, in this hidden Cretan cave, the future is being shaped. Not by a mighty titan, but by the combined efforts of a grieving mother, dancing spirits, a magical goat, and a bee. It's a strangely domestic, yet profoundly powerful, beginning for the most powerful of the gods. And all the while, the first monsters, the Hecaton Shires, and the Cyclopes, wait in their dark prison, their fate inextricably linked to the baby god, whose cries are hidden by the sound of clashing shields. The stage is being set for a war that will reshape the heavens, and the monsters in the dark will finally get a chance to choose a side. From the hidden cave in Crete, Zeus grows to adulthood, strong and cunning, fueled by divine nectar and the constant clattering lullaby of his protectors. He eventually forces Cronus to disgorge his siblings, and together they wage a war that shakes the cosmos, the Titanomachi. After a decade of colossal battle, the Olympians are victorious, casting the defeated Titans into the gloomy pit of Tartarus. But the old order does not give up so easily. In its death rattle, the Age of the Titans produces one final, catastrophic creature, a being of such pure, world-ending fury that it makes the Hecaton Shires look like cuddly kittens. This is the story of Typhon. The world, under the new rule of Zeus and his siblings, is still settling. There's a tentative peace, but it's a peace built on recent violence. The earth, Gaia, is once again grieving. She watched her Titan children, her firstborn, be defeated and imprisoned by this new upstart generation of gods. The Olympians, in their victory, have become arrogant, ruling from their new home on Mount Olympus, their laughter echoing down the mountainsides. This arrogance is the final straw for Gaia. The pain of Uranus's imprisonment of her first monstrous children, the pain of Cronus's defeat, it all boils over into a final desperate and terrifying act of creation. She does not gently give birth this time. She consorts with the deepest, most primal part of herself, with Tartarus, the abyss itself. And from that union of the solid earth and the formless void, she conceives and brings forth her youngest child, and her most terrible, Typhon. His birth is not a delivery. It is an eruption. The ground heaves and splits open in a searing fissure, not in the gentle hills of Greece, but in the wild, untamed land of Cilicia. The air fills with the stench of scorched rock and sulfur. This is not a being shaped by love or even purpose, but by pure, unadulterated rage. To merely call him a monster is to call a supernova a spark. He is the embodiment of chaotic, volcanic, hurricane force. He is the storm that ends worlds. Try to picture him, if you can, without your mind recoiling. Later poets would struggle, piling on description after description in a desperate attempt to capture his scale and horror. His body is so vast that his head often scrapes the stars, while his feet are planted in the deepest pits of Tartarus. He is not a man, not a beast, but a horrific amalgamation of every terrifying creature you can imagine, and several you can't. From the thighs down, he is a monstrous coiled mass of viper bodies, each one as thick as an ancient oak, hissing and spitting venom that sizzles and eats through the very air. Where his hands should be, there are 100 serpent heads, each with a flickering, forked tongue and eyes burning with malevolent intelligence. These are not mere appendages. They think, they strike, they speak in 100 different, sibilant whispers that promise utter annihilation. His own head is a shifting nightmare. Sometimes it is that of a man, but twisted and cruel, with a beard of storm clouds and eyes that flash with lightning not his own. More often, it is the head of a donkey, braying a sound that cracks mountains, or 100 dragon heads sprouting from his neck and shoulders, each breathing a different element: fire, ice, poison, black smoke. His wings, when he spreads them, are not feathered. They are vast, leathery membranes, like a bat's, but on a scale that blots out the sun, casting the entire world into an artificial, terrifying twilight. When he beats them, the resulting wind is not a breeze. It is a typhoon that scatters islands like dust and whips the sea into a frenzy of 1,000-foot waves. His voice is a symphony of terror. It is the roar of a lion mixed with the bellow of a bull, the howl of a mad dog, and the piercing hiss of a who. Legion of serpents all rolled into one deafening cacophony that can shatter eardrums and drive mortals instantly insane. He is, in essence, a living, breathing natural disaster with a personal grudge. And his grudge is very specific. He has one purpose, one driving instinct implanted in him by his mother's wrath: to overthrow Zeus and the Olympian order, to return the world to the primal chaos from which it came. The mere approach of Typhon sends the new gods into a panic they have never known. This isn't a war for power. It's a war for existence. The stories vary, but in one of the most traumatic versions, the Olympians first get a report of this approach in horror. Curious, or perhaps arrogant, they go to investigate. They see him coming from afar, a moving mountain range of scales and wings and swirling storm clouds, his shadow stretching for miles. And one by one, their courage fails. They break. They turn and they flee. To avoid total capture and humiliation, they transform themselves into animals and scatter to the winds. Zeus becomes a ram. Apollo becomes a hawk. Dionysus a goat. Artemis a cat. It's a comical, almost pathetic image. The mighty gods of Olympus reduced to a panicked menagerie, fleeing from a force they cannot comprehend. Only Zeus stands his ground, and only Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, stays by his side, berating him for his initial hesitation and urging him to fight. This is the moment. The king of the gods, the wielder of the lightning bolt, against the ultimate weapon of the old world. The battle begins, and it is not a duel. It is the cosmos tearing itself apart. Zeus ascends to his chariot and hurls his first thunderbolts, the very ones forged by the Cyclopes. They strike Typhon with the force of 1,000 simultaneous storms. The sound is unimaginable, a continuous, world-spanning crack of thunder that has no pause. The lightning sears the monster's serpentine flesh, leaving blackened, smoldering wounds. But Typhon is not so easily defeated. He roars back, and from his 100 mouths he breathes fire and ice in torrents of boiling water. He reaches up with his serpent hands, and they coil around the god, dragging him from his chariot. The struggle is intimate and brutal. Typhon manages to wrestle Zeus to the ground, in a place later called the Cretan Cave. Here, in the dark, damp confines of the earth, the king of the sky is at his weakest. Typhon, using a bizarre and cunning weapon, pulls out an adamantine sickle, a cruel echo of the one used against Uranus, and slices the tendons from Zeus's hands and feet. He effectively cripples the god, removing his power to move and to wield his lightning. It is the ultimate humiliation. Zeus, helpless and in agony, is carried by the monster into the Cretan Cave and placed under the guard of a she-dragon, Delphine, a creature half-maiden, half-serpent, whose eyes glow like embers in the dark. The fate of the cosmos now rests in a damp cave, with its ruler immobilized. The world holds its breath. The sun seems to dim. The seas grow strangely still. It seems like Typhon has won. The age of the Olympians was a brief, bright flash, soon to be extinguished by the primordial dark. But the story isn't over. As Typhon celebrates his victory, the cleverness of the Olympians, even in their animal forms, comes into play. Or, in another version, the messenger god Hermes and the goat god Pan, who had been hiding in the reeds, discover what has happened. They sneak into the cave, their hearts pounding against their ribs, the only sound besides the drip of water and the low, satisfied hissing of the dragon Delphine. With incredible stealth, they manage to distract the she-dragon and retrieve the stolen sinews. They then carefully, painstakingly, reattach them to Zeus's limbs. The power floods back into the god. It's a slow, searing warmth at first, then a building torrent of cosmic energy. His eyes, which had been dim with pain, now flash with a renewed, furious light. He rises from the cold floor of the cave, his body whole again, his purpose clear. The second phase of the battle is even more ferocious than the first. This time, Zeus is not just fighting for power. He's fighting for survival, and with the knowledge of how close he came to utter defeat. He pursues Typhon across the world, hurling thunderbolt after thunderbolt. The monster flees, throwing mountains behind him as makeshift shields. But Zeus's aim is true. The final confrontation takes place at Mount Cassius, near the border of Egypt. Zeus gathers all his strength, all the fury of the sky, and unleashes a final, concentrated storm of lightning bolts. They strike Typhon with the force of a dying star, burning, searing, pounding him into the earth. The monster falls, his vast body crashing down with an impact that reshapes the landscape, creating new valleys and mountain ranges. But he is not killed, for he is a primordial force, and such forces cannot be utterly destroyed. Instead, Zeus picks up the entire island of Sicily, a massive, triangular piece of land, and hurls it on top of the defeated Typhon, burying him alive beneath its weight. And there he remains, imprisoned for all eternity. But even in imprisonment, he is not quiet. His rage still burns. The fires of Mount Etna, the volcano on Sicily, are the fires of his breath, still trying to scorch the sky that defeated him. His restless tossing and turning is what causes the earthquakes that ripple through the Mediterranean. He is a permanent, rumbling reminder of the time the New World Order almost fell, of the terrifying power that lies just beneath the thin crust of civilization, waiting, always waiting. With Typhon buried beneath Sicily, his fiery breath forever staining the sky above Mount Etna, the rule of the Olympians finally seems secure. The world enters a new age, an age of heroes and city-states, of quests and tragedies that play out on a more human, though no less mythical scale. But the legacy of monstrous births is far from over. Now the horror moves from the cosmic to the personal, from the mountaintops to the very heart of a king's palace, where a different kind of monster, born from human arrogance and divine punishment, awaits in a prison of stone and shame. This is the story of the Minotaur. The scene shifts to the powerful island kingdom of Crete, ruled by the proud king Minos. From the sea, Crete rises like a jewel, its white stone palaces gleaming in the sun, its ports bustling with ships from every corner of the known world. Minos, blessed by Zeus himself, or so he claims, rules with confidence. To prove his divine favor, he prays to Poseidon, god of the sea, to send him a bull from the waves, promising to sacrifice it in the god's honor. Poseidon, in a display of power, obliges. He sends a bull, but not just any bull. This is a creature of breathtaking, supernatural majesty. Its coat is a pure, blinding white, as if woven from moonlight and sea foam. Its muscles ripple with a power that seems to shift the very air around it, and its horns are curved works of art, tipped with what looks like gold. It erupts from the surf, salt water streaming from its flawless hide, and stands on the beach, proud and unearthly, a true gift from the god. And here, Minos makes his fatal mistake. He sees this magnificent creature, this divine symbol of his own power, and he covets it. The thought of plunging a knife into its perfect throat, of reducing it to a mere offering, feels like a waste. Greed overwhelms piety, so he decides to cheat a god. He hides the magnificent bull away in his own herds, and sacrifices a different, ordinary bull in its place, thinking Poseidon won't notice. It's the ancient equivalent of trying to shortchange the universe. Poseidon, of course, notices. The gods always do. And his wrath is not a simple, straightforward punishment. It is a subtle, cruel, and deeply personal revenge. He goes to Aphrodite, the goddess of love and desire, and enlists her help. Together, they inflict a punishment that will poison Minos' own household. They curse Minos' wife, Queen Pasiphae, with an unnatural, all-consuming, and impossible desire. They make her fall in love with the white bull. It's not a gentle infatuation. It's a maddening, obsessive passion that burns away her reason and her dignity. She can think of nothing else. She spends her days wandering the palace, drawn to the windows that overlook the pastures where the bull is kept, her heart aching with a longing she cannot fulfill and dares not speak. The shame of it eats at her, but the desire is stronger. Desperate, she finally confesses her torment to the one man in Crete clever enough to solve an impossible problem. Daedalus, the legendary Athenian inventor and craftsman who lives at Minos' court. Daedalus, a man whose mind can build wonders from wood and bronze, listens. He is an artist, an engineer, a problem solver. And this is the ultimate problem. He doesn't judge. He calculates. He devises a solution that is as brilliant as it is horrifying. He constructs a hollow cow. But this is no simple prop. It is a masterwork of deception, built from a wooden frame and covered in the fresh, supple hide of a real cow, stitched with such precision the seams are invisible. He designs it to be lifelike in every detail, the curve of its back, the hang of its head, the way its sides would move with simulated breath. He even includes a mechanism inside so that Pasiphae can climb into the structure, and it will emit low, convincing moos. It is a perversion of his art, a masterpiece of deviancy. The scene that follows is one of the most unsettling in all of mythology. Under the cover of darkness, the wooden cow is wheeled out into the pasture. Pasiphae, a queen, crawls inside the dark, cramped, and smelly confines of the fake animal. The scent of fresh hide and sawdust fills her nostrils. She waits, her heart pounding against the wooden ribs of her disguise. The white bull, curious, approaches this new, strangely alluring creature. And from this unnatural, cursed union, a child is conceived. When Pasiphae gives birth, the horror is made manifest. The child is a boy, and she names him Asterion, Starry One, a name of beautiful, hopeful irony. But he is not a boy. He is not a bull. He is both, and neither. He has the body of a powerful human male, but from the neck up, he has the head and the face of a bull. Not a gentle cow-like face, but the fierce muscular head of the majestic white bull, with a broad wet nose wide. Dark eyes that hold a confusing mix of animal fear inhuman intelligence, and sharp, dangerous horns curling from his temples. He is the Minotaur, the bull of Minos. As he grows, the problem becomes acute. He is strong, increasingly uncontrollable, and his diet is not that of a man. He develops a taste for flesh, human flesh. He is a walking, breathing reminder of the king's sin, the queen's shame, and the god's wrath, all contained in one monstrous form. He cannot be allowed to roam the palace. He cannot be killed, for he is still, technically, of royal blood. Minos, once again, turns to Daedalus. His command is simple: build a prison from which this creature can never escape. Daedalus, the architect of the problem, now becomes the architect of the solution. And what a solution it is! He doesn't build a simple cage or a dark dungeon. He designs the labyrinth. The word itself has entered our language to mean a maze, but the original labyrinth was something more. It was a vast, underground complex, a work of art in its own terrifying right. It was a structure so brilliantly, fiendishly complex that once inside, no one could ever find their way out. The passages didn't just turn left and right. They curved back on themselves. They led up and down staircases that went nowhere. They featured rooms that were perfect circles with a dozen identical doors. There were dead ends that felt like progress and open chambers that were actually traps. The walls were high, made of cold, featureless stone, and they all looked the same. The only light came from flickering torches placed at distant, mocking intervals, casting long, dancing shadows that twisted and writhed like the corridors themselves. The air was still and cold, smelling of damp dust and ancient stone, and the only sounds were the echo of your own footsteps, and, from somewhere deep in the heart of the maze, a low, persistent, guttural sound. The sound of the Minotaur, breathing, snuffling, waiting. This is where Asterion is condemned to live. He doesn't stalk the corridors, a cunning hunter. He mostly stays in the central chamber, a creature of habit and confusion. His world is defined by the endless, identical walls. He is a prisoner as much as the victims who are sent to him. And here, the story intersects with another tragedy. Minos' son, Androgeos, is killed in Athens. In his rage and grief, Minos imposes a brutal tribute on the city of Athens. Every 9 years, or in some versions, every year Athens must send 7 young men and 7 young women to Crete as a sacrifice. These 14 youths are not simply killed. They are sent to the labyrinth unarmed. The great bronze doors, intricately carved with patterns that themselves seem to shift and confuse the eye, swing open. The Athenian victims, chosen by lot, are pushed inside. The doors boom shut behind them, the sound final and absolute. Their fate is to wander the endless corridors, lost and terrified, until eventually, from the echoing silence, they hear the heavy, plodding footsteps and the ragged breathing. They smell the animal musk of the creature. And then the Minotaur finds them. The killing is not a heroic battle. It is a brutal, desperate, one-sided slaughter. The Minotaur, driven by a primal hunger he cannot understand, attacks with the raw strength of a beast. It is a bleak, hopeless cycle of death, a ritual born from a king's pride, a queen's curse, and a god's wrath. The labyrinth becomes a stomach of stone, digesting the youth of Athens to feed the shame of Crete. And at the center of it all is Asterion, the Minotaur, the starry one. He is not a villain scheming in the dark. He is a tragic figure, a child of a divine cruel joke, a being with a human soul trapped in a monster's body, living in a nightmare of his own making, driven by instincts he never asked for. His home is not a lair. It is the physical manifestation of his own confused and imprisoned mind. He doesn't know why the small, screaming things keep appearing in his world. He only knows the hunger, the dark, and the endless winding walls. The tragedy of the Minotaur, confined to its sunless stone maze, represents one kind of terror, the horror of the contained, the shame hidden away. But the swamps of Lerna offer a different, more prolific nightmare. Here, the horror is not trapped. It grows, it multiplies. It festers in the open, in a mist-shrouded wetland where the very water seems to breathe with a malevolent life, giving rise to a creature whose defeat seems as impossible as the monster itself. This is the story of the Lernian Hydra. Leaving the intricate stone corridors of Crete behind, we travel to the Argolid Peninsula, to a place where the firm ground gives way to something soft and treacherous. The spring of Amymone, the entrance to the Hydra's domain, isn't a clear, bubbling brook. It is a murky, algae-choked pool, surrounded by gnarled, water-rotted trees whose roots claw at the soggy earth like skeletal fingers. The air here is thick and heavy, saturated with the cloying sweetness of decay, the smell of rotting vegetation, of stagnant water, of something else. Something vaguely reptilian and ancient. A low, persistent mist clings to the ground, obscuring your feet and twisting familiar shapes into looming phantoms. The silence is broken, not by birdsong, but by the occasional plop of a bubble rising from the murky depths, or the skittering of unseen things through the reeds. This is the lair of the Hydra, a creature born from the same toxic lineage as the Nemean lion and, further back, the monstrous Echidna and Typhon. It is, in a sense, a grandchild of primordial chaos, a relic of the old world that has stubbornly refused to die, adapting to its swampy home with a vengeance. And what a creature it is! The Hydra is not merely a large snake. It is an abomination of biology, a perversion of nature's rules. Its body is that of a massive, serpentine dog, thick as a mature tree trunk, covered in slick, dark scales that glisten with a sickly iridescence in the faint light. It moves with a slithering, muscular grace that is both mesmerizing and deeply unsettling. But its most famous, most terrifying feature is its heads. It doesn't have one. It has 9. Some poets say 50, or even 100, but the classic number is 9. These are not all identical. The central head, the largest and the leader, is said to be immortal, a gold-tinged scale protecting its neck, its eyes burning with an ancient, malicious intelligence. The other 8 heads sprout around it like a hideous, writhing crown. Each head is a fully functioning serpent, with its own brain, its own personality of pure hostility. Their eyes are lidless, black pools of venomous hate. Their mouths are lined with needle-sharp fangs, and from them drips a saliva so toxic that its mere vapor can choke the life from a man, and a single drop can sear through flesh and bone. The heads are never still. They weave and bob independently, hissing and snapping at the air, at each other, at anything that moves. The sound is a constant, sibilant chorus, a dissonant symphony of threat. They sleep in shifts, so the monster is never fully unaware. But the Hydra's true horror, the thing that made its name synonymous with an unsolvable problem, is its regeneration. If you manage to cut off one of its heads, something unbelievable happens. From the bleeding stump, 2 new heads sprout, fully formed, twice as angry and ready to fight. Cut 1, get 2. It's a nightmare of exponential growth. Imagine facing it. You swing your sword with all your might, severing a neck with a wet, crunching sound. For a triumphant second, you think you've gained ground. But then, from the gushing wound, there is a horrible, squelching, tearing sound. 2 new necks, pale and glistening, erupt forth, muscles writhing into place, scales hardening in seconds. 2 new heads snap into existence, their eyes blinking open, their jaws unhinging to release twin hisses. Your victory has only made your problem worse. You are not whittling the monster down. You are helping it multiply. This is the impossible task that faces the hero Heracles as the second of his famous 12 labors. Eurystheus, seeking to get rid of his ridiculously strong cousin, commands him to kill the Lernian Hydra, So Heracles, accompanied by his young nephew and charioteer, Iolaus, journeys to the swamp. They arrive at the edge of the mist, the stench of the bog filling their nostrils. They can hear the Hydra before they see it, that constant, multi-voiced hissing echoing through the twisted trees. Heracles, perhaps thinking to smoke the creature out, first shoots flaming arrows into the Hydra's lair, enraging it and drawing it out from its sunken den. The monster emerges from the murky water, its vast, coiling body displacing thick, black mud, its 9 heads rising above the mist like a forest of hatred. The battle is joined. It is a brutal, close-quarters affair. Heracles, with his immense strength, wades into the swamp, his feet sinking into the soft, sucking mud. He begins to club the heads with his massive olive wood club. Thwump. One head recoils, dazed. Crack. Another is smashed aside. But bludgeoning won't kill it. So he draws his sword, a great bronze blade, and starts to hack. Swish thud, a head flies, its hiss cut short. For a moment, there is silence from that neck. Then, the horrible squelching. 2 new heads burst forth, snapping and spitting. Heracles hacks again, and again. 2 heads become 4. 4 become 6. The monster is growing, its mass expanding, its writhing crown of heads becoming an impenetrable thicket of fangs and rage. The swamp water around them churns, turning a foul, cloudy pink with ichor and disturbed filth. Heracles is a demigod of immense power, but even he is being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. To make matters worse, the goddess Hera, who despises Heracles, sends a giant crab to aid the Hydra. It scuttles out of the reeds, its pincers snapping at Heracles' ankles, trying to distract him, to make him stumble. Heracles, with a grunt of annoyance, simply crushes the crab under his heel with a sickening crunch of shell. But the distraction has cost him. The Hydra's heads press their advantage, their venomous breath clouding the air, making his eyes water and his lungs burn. He is being pushed back, the mathematical certainty of his defeat becoming clearer with every swing of his sword. This is the pivotal moment. This is where brute force meets cleverness. Iolaus, watching from the chariot, sees the problem. His uncle is making the monster stronger. He shouts an idea over the hissing and the splashing. "Fire," he yells. "Cauterize the wounds." Heracles understands instantly. He drops his sword and commands Iolaus to bring him a torch. Now the strategy changes. Heracles grabs one of the Hydra's heads, his muscles straining against its thrashing strength. With a mighty roar, he lops it off with his sword. But before the 2 new heads can even begin to form, Iolaus is there, thrusting a blazing torch into the bleeding stump. The sound is horrifying, a sharp, sizzling hiss, like meat dropped on a red-hot griddle, but magnified 100 times. The smell is even worse, the acrid stench of burning flesh and seared scales, mixing with the swamp's decay. The stump blackens, smokes, and seals shut. No new heads can grow. It works. One by one, they repeat the gruesome process. Heracles, the strength, severs the heads. Iolaus, the wit, cauterizes the stumps. It is a brutal, methodical, 2-man assembly line of monster disposal. The Hydra thrashes and coils in agony, its remaining heads shrieking in a unified chorus of pain and fury, but its advantage is gone. Finally, only the central immortal head remains. It cannot be killed by conventional means. So Heracles, in a final act of decisive violence, lops it off as well. But this time, instead of cauterizing it, he takes a massive boulder, or in some versions, the very rock he used to crush the crab, and he buries the still hissing, immortal head beneath it, deep in the swamp. He effectively imprisons it forever. The monster's body goes limp, its vast coils settling into the murky water. The battle is over. As a final act, Heracles dips his arrows into the Hydra's venomous blood, creating weapons so toxic that even a scratch would mean a slow, agonizing death. This act itself will spawn more tragedies in the future. A ripple effect of the Hydra's poison reaching far beyond the swamp. The Hydra is defeated, but its legacy, like the regenerating heads it was famous for, continues to sprout new stories, new lessons. It teaches that some problems cannot be solved by direct attack alone. That sometimes you need a new tool, a new perspective, a partner with a torch, to burn the root of the problem so it can't grow back. The swamp of Lerna eventually grows quiet again, the mist reclaiming the bloody water. But if you listen very closely, some say you can still hear a faint, muffled hissing coming from deep, deep underground. From the wet, regenerative horror of the Hydra's swamp, we travel to a place of dry, dusty intellect and despair. The road to Thebes is not choked with mist, but with a different kind of oppression, a silent, waiting dread that hangs over the city like a shroud. Here, the terror is not a mindless, multiplying force of nature, but a cunning, patient, and philosophical predator. It doesn't crush its victims or poison them. It outsmarts them. It poses a question, and for the wrong answer, the price is a brutal, personal end. This is the story of the Sphinx. The city of Thebes is cursed. A plague of a different kind grips it, not of disease, but of stagnation and grief. The fields are untended because farmers are afraid to travel the mountain pass. Trade has dried up because merchants take impossibly long detours. A palpable silence hangs over the city gates, broken only by the occasional wail of a mourner. The cause of this paralysis sits on a rocky outcrop overlooking the main road to Thebes, a vantage point that gives it a clear, merciless view of all who approach. The Sphinx. She is not a single, consistent creature across all tellings, but the most common and terrifying version is a hybrid of chilling precision. She has the head of a woman, often with a face of serene, unsettling beauty, framed by dark, intricately braided hair. Her eyes are deep and knowing, holding a wisdom that is ancient and utterly devoid of mercy. But from the neck down, her body is that of a powerful lion, its tawny coat rippling over muscles built for the pounce. And then, sprouting from her back, are the vast, majestic wings of a giant eagle, feathers the color of weathered stone, which she sometimes spreads to cast a terrifying shadow over travelers below. She is a chimera of intelligence, strength, and the freedom of the skies, a perfect engine of predation. She doesn't hunt in the conventional sense. She doesn't stalk through the undergrowth. She waits. She perches on her rock, sunning herself, watching the tiny figures toil up the path towards the city. Her tail, with a tuft of lion hair, flicks back and forth with a soft, rhythmic thwomp against the stone, the only sign of her impatience. She lets her victims come to her. When a traveler, a hopeful merchant, a returning soldier, a lost pilgrim draws near, she descends. It's not a frantic attack. It is a graceful, almost ceremonial landing, her wings beating once, twice, to settle the dust around her. She blocks the path, her lion body crouched, her human face regarding the person with a calm, academic curiosity. And then she speaks. Her voice is not a roar or a hiss. It is melodic, clear, and cold, like ice cracking on a winter pond. She recites her riddle. It is a single, deceptively simple question, a puzzle that has become one of the most famous in all of literature. What goes on 4 feet in the morning, 2 feet at noon, and 3 feet in the evening? The words hang in the dry, thin air. There is no timer you can see, but the clock is ticking. The traveler stands there, heart hammering against their ribs, the sun beating down on their neck. They can smell the dry dust of the road, the faint, wild scent of the Sphinx's fur. They can see the sharp, calculated intelligence in her human eyes. They stammer. They guess. A dog? A horse? The life cycle of a plant? With each wrong answer, the Sphinx's serene expression does not change into a snarl. There is no rage. There is only a slight, almost disappointed tilt of the head. And then she moves. It is blindingly fast. A single fluid pounce. A powerful lion body propels her forward. There is a brief, choked cry, the sound of claws rending cloth and flesh, a terrible, brittle cracking sound, and then silence. She does not eat her victims out of hunger. This is not about sustenance. It is about enforcement. It is a ritual killing, a weeding out of the unintelligent, a brutal filter on the population of Thebes. The bodies of the failed, shattered, broken, and discarded litter the base of her rock, a grim monument to the city's helplessness. The Thebans are desperate. The ruler, Creon, perhaps acting as regent after the mysterious death of the previous king Laius, has announced a reward. He who rids the city of the Sphinx will be made king and given the hand of the recently widowed queen, Jocasta, in marriage. Many have tried for the prize. All have failed. The road remains closed. The city holds its breath. And then a stranger arrives. His name is Oedipus. He is a man from Corinth, or so he believes, a man with a quick mind and a past shrouded in his own mystery. He is fleeing a prophecy that he will kill his father and marry his mother, a fate he thinks he has avoided by leaving home. He approaches the pass, and he sees the carnage, the bleached bones and tattered clothing. He sees the Sphinx on her perch. She sees him. The ritual begins again. She descends, her wings stirring the dust, her hybrid form blocking his path. She looks at him, this new, determined face, and she poses her riddle in that same chillingly calm voice. What goes on 4 feet in the morning, 2 feet at noon, and 3 feet in the evening? Oedipus does not panic. He does not stammer. He stands there, considering. He thinks not of animals or plants, but of the arc of a human life. The morning of life is infancy, when a child crawls on all fours. The noon of life is adulthood, when a person walks upright on 2 feet. The evening of life is old age, when a person uses a walking stick as a 3rd foot. The answer is a man. He looks up at the Sphinx, meets her gaze, and gives his solution. For a long moment, there is absolute silence on the mountain road. The only sound is the whisper of the wind through the rocks. The Sphinx stares at him. Her expression, for the first time, shifts. The serene mask of intelligence cracks, revealing something beneath shock, perhaps, or a profound, cosmic frustration. Her riddle is solved. Her purpose is void. The game is over. In that moment, the creature is defeated not by a sword or a club, but by a thought. According to the most common version of the myth, the Sphinx does not attack. She lets out a terrible, strangled cry, a mixture of a woman's scream, a lion's roar, and an eagle's shriek, a sound of pure, defeated fury. Then she hurls herself from her rocky perch, casting herself down to the rocks below, ending her own life. The threat is gone. The road to Thebes is open. Oedipus, the solver of riddles, the savior of the city, enters Thebes as a hero. He claims his rewards. He is made king. He marries Queen Jocasta. He is celebrated. But the story of the Sphinx is more than just a clever puzzle. She was not a random monster. She was a manifestation of divine punishment, sent by the gods, likely by Hera, to torment Thebes for its past sins. She was the embodiment of a problem that could not be solved by force, only by wisdom. And in her defeat, she sets in motion the final, tragic acts of the Theban cycle. Because Oedipus, in solving the riddle of the Sphinx, has yet to solve the riddle of his own life. He does not know that the man he killed on the road earlier was King Laius, his true father. He does not know that the queen he now shares a bed with is his true mother, Jocasta. The Sphinx was the gatekeeper, not just to a city, but to a truth so horrifying that its revelation would unravel everything. She was the test, and in passing it, Oedipus unknowingly seals his own horrific fate. The creature on the rock was a diversion, a complex question that hid a much simpler, much more terrible answer. The real monster was never the hybrid at the gates. It was the secret waiting in the palace. And with the Sphinx gone, there is nothing left to stop Oedipus from walking straight into it. The Sphinx's defeat cleared the road to Thebes, but it opened a path to a tragedy of self-knowledge that would leave a king blinded and a kingdom in ruins. Some monsters guard cities. Others guard truths too terrible to look upon directly. But there are creatures in the Greek world whose very faces are the danger, whose gaze offers not a difficult truth, but a permanent, silent end. We leave the intellectual despair of Thebes for a remote, windswept shore, a place where the boundary between life and art is violently erased. This is the story of the Gorgons, and of one in particular, Medusa. The Gorgons are three sisters, Stheno, Euryale, and the most famous, Medusa. They live at the edge of the world, beyond the river Oceanus, in a land of perpetual twilight and echoing caves. Their home is not a swamp or a mountain pass, but a stark coastal grotto where the sea crashes against sharp rocks with a relentless pounding rhythm. The air is thick with the salt spray and the tang of something ancient and metallic. But the most striking feature of their domain is not the landscape, it is the garden. Scattered around the entrance to their cave, standing in silent, gruesome poses, are dozens, perhaps hundreds of statues. They are not carved from marble by any human hand. They are men, women, animals, all frozen in a moment of pure, petrified terror. Their faces are contorted in a final, silent scream, their hands raised in a futile attempt to shield their eyes. Moss and lichen cling to their stony skin, and seabirds perch on their heads, adding to the eerie, still-life horror. These are the failed heroes, the curious adventurers, the unlucky sailors who stumbled upon this shore and met the Gorgon's gaze. The Gorgons themselves are unlike any other creatures. In the earliest myths, they are monstrous from birth, born from the ancient sea deities Phorcys and Saito. Their bodies are often depicted as winged, their hands tipped with brass claws, and their mouths sporting boar's tusks. But their most defining feature is their hair. It is not hair at all, but a writhing, hissing, living nest of venomous snakes. The sound is constant, a low, sibilant sizzle that seems to emanate from their very heads, a chorus of tiny, forked tongues tasting the air for fear. And then there are their eyes. They are wide, lidless, and burning with a pale, hypnotic light. But to look into them is death. Not a physical death of claws and teeth, but an instant, irreversible transformation. Their gaze does not kill you. It stops you. It turns your living, breathing, bleeding flesh into cold, unfeeling stone. It is a magic of the most final kind, a pause button pressed on a soul. Yet of the three, Medusa is unique. She is the only one who is mortal. This is the key to her story, and the source of her tragedy. For in later tellings, most famously by the Roman poet Ovid, Medusa was not always a monster. She was once breathtakingly beautiful, a mortal priestess serving in the temple of Athena. Her hair was her pride, a flowing, glorious mane that caught the light like dark silk. But her beauty attracted the attention of the god Poseidon. And in Athena's own temple, an act of desecration occurred. Whether it was seduction or violence depends on the telling. The goddess Athena, enraged not at Poseidon, but at Medusa for the defilement of her sacred space, punished the young woman with a cruelty that defies reason. She transformed Medusa's beautiful hair into the nest of vipers. She made her face so horrifying that any who looked upon it would turn to stone. She cast her out, this now monstrous woman, to the edge of the world to live with her already monstrous sisters. So Medusa becomes a paradox. A mortal woman trapped in an immortal curse, a victim transformed into a predator. She cannot be looked at. She cannot be touched. She cannot know companionship or comfort. Her very existence is a weapon. She lives in that seaside cave, the hissing of the snakes on her head, a perpetual reminder of her violation and punishment. She doesn't hunt. She doesn't seek out victims. They come to her, drawn by tales of a monster or by the promise of a prize. For the other part of the Gorgon-esque legend is that whoever could kill Medusa and bring back her head would possess a weapon of unimaginable power. A weapon that needed no sharpening, that never missed its mark. A gaze that could still petrify, even after death. This is the task that falls to the hero Perseus. The setup is familiar. A wicked king, Polydex, wants to get rid of Perseus and marry his mother, so he sends the young man on an impossible quest. Bring me the head of Medusa. It's a suicide mission. How do you fight something you cannot look at? How do you approach a creature whose very face is a death sentence? This is where Perseus' story becomes less about brute force and more about divine gadgetry. The gods, for once, are on the hero's side. Hermes gives him a set of gifts. Winged sandals to fly to the end of the world. A magical wallet, the kibisis, to safely contain the head. And most importantly, an adamantine sickle, sharp enough to sever the Gorgon's neck. But the most crucial tool comes from Athena herself. A highly polished bronze shield, so reflective it acts as a mirror. Perseus does not need to look at Medusa directly. He can look at her reflection. He flies to the Gorgon's shore, the wind whipping past him. The smell of salt and stone dust fills his nostrils. He lands softly, his feet barely making a sound on the rocky ground. He can hear the hissing from the cave, the relentless crash of the waves. He approaches the garden of statues, moving carefully between the petrified forms, their frozen screams a silent warning. He finds the entrance to the cave, a dark maw in the cliffside. Inside, in the gloom, he can make out three shapes. Stheno and Euryale are asleep, their winged forms rising and falling with a slow, rhythmic breath, the snake hairs on their heads slightly subdued, but still faintly hissing. And there is Medusa, awake, or perhaps drifting in and out of a troubled sleep. Perseus does not look into the cave. He turns his back to it. He raises the polished shield, angling it so he can see the reflection of the scene inside. The world is inverted, color and light shimmering on the bronze surface. He sees her. In the reflection, her face is there, but the direct, petrifying power is neutralized. He can see the serpents coiling and uncoiling. He can see the outline of her features, the tragic shape of the monster she has become. He steadies his breath. Using the reflection as his guide, he creeps into the cave, his steps silent on the stone floor. The air is cold and smells of damp rock and snake. He can hear the soft, sibilant breathing of the sleeping Gorgons. He positions himself behind Medusa. He raises the adamantine sickle. In one swift, precise motion, guided entirely by the image in the shield, he swings. The blade meets its mark. There is a sound like shearing rock, a sharp, final slice. The hissing of the snakes rises to a frantic, dying crescendo. From the severed neck, two things spring forth. The winged horse Pegasus and the giant Chrysaor, armed with a golden sword. They are the children of Poseidon, born from Medusa's death. Perseus doesn't pause. He grabs the head by the snakes, their bodies still writhing in his grasp, and stuffs it into the kibisis. The magic of the wallet contains the power. The other two Gorgons awaken, their own hisses turning to roars of fury. But Perseus is already in the air, the winged sandals carrying him away from the edge of the world, the most dangerous trophy in history safely stored in his bag. He has conquered the unconquerable gaze. He has turned the monster's own power into a tool. Medusa's story is one of the most layered in all of myth. She is a victim, a monster, a weapon, and a mother, all at once. Her face, which meant instant death in life, becomes a tool of salvation and vengeance in death, used by Perseus to defeat a sea monster and turn a wicked king to stone. Her visage, the Gorgoneon, would later be emblazoned on the aegis of Athena, the very goddess who cursed her, as a symbol of protective power. The gaze that turned men to stone in fear now protects a goddess in battle. It's a final, bitter irony for the mortal woman who lost everything for a crime that may not have been her own. From the stark, solitary horror of Medusa's gaze, we turn to a creature of community and contradiction, one that embodies the eternal struggle between civilized thought and primal instinct. They are not solitary monsters lurking at the world's edge, but a race, a people, living in the rugged mountains and forests of Thessaly. They walk, or rather, gallop, the blurred line between man and beast, capable of profound wisdom and shocking brutality, often within the same breath. This is the story of the Centaurs. Picture the Pelian Range in northern Greece. Not the clean, sun-drenched hills of tourist brochures, but a raw, untamed wilderness. The air here is thick with the scent of pine resin, damp earth, and wild thyme. You hear the rush of mountain streams, the cry of hawks circling overhead, and beneath it all, a different sound, the rhythmic thunder of hooves on hard-packed ground, a sound that is neither fully horse nor fully human. This is the home of the Centaurs. To see one is to experience a moment of cognitive dissonance. From the waist up, they are men muscular, bearded, with human faces that can express intelligence, curiosity, or rage. Their hands can grip a wine cup or wield a massive boulder. But from the waist down, they are powerful horses, with sleek, sweating flanks, powerful haunches, and hooves that can crush a skull. The joining is seamless, a fact of nature. Their bodies are a paradox of grace and raw power. When they move, it's not the elegant trot of a trained stallion, but a ground-eating, purposeful lope that covers impossible distances. The sound of their approach is a rising storm of hoofbeats and heavy breathing. The origin of the Centaurs is as strange as their form. They trace their lineage to a singular, bizarre event. Ixion, a king punished by Zeus for his arrogance and attempted seduction of the goddess Hera, was bound to a fiery spinning wheel in Tartarus for eternity. But before his final punishment, Zeus, in a moment of pity or perhaps cruel experimentation, created a cloud nymph, Nephele, in the perfect image of Hera. Ixion, deceived or simply desperate, lay with this cloud form. From that union of a mortal king and an insubstantial phantom, the first centaur, Centaurus, was born. He, in turn, mated with the wild Magnesian mares of the Thessalian plains, spawning the entire race. They are literally born from a trick of the light and the wildness of the horse, a heritage of deception and untamed nature that explains their deeply divided souls. This division defines them. On one hoof, you have the potential for civilization. They are taught by the wisest among them, Chiron. He is the exception, the noble centaur. Unlike his brethren, who are born from Ixion's line, Chiron is the son of the Titan Cronus and the ocean nymph Philyra. His form is the same, but his nature is entirely different. He is a master of healing, music, archery, and prophecy. His cave on Mount Pelion is not a wild den, but a sanctuary of knowledge, filled with drying herbs, scrolls, and musical instruments. The air smells of lavender and myrrh, not sweat and horse. His eyes are kind and knowing. He is the tutor to heroes: Achilles, Jason, Asclepius, Heracles. He represents what the centaurs could be: a bridge between the wild world and the world of reason and art. But on the other hoof, there is the overwhelming pull of savagery, embodied by the majority of the race. They are ruled not by their minds, but by their stomachs and their lusts. They are infamous for their inability to handle alcohol. Wine, the drink of civilized symposiums, unleashes the beast within them. It short-circuits their human reason and empowers their equine passions. This fatal flaw leads to their most famous and most disastrous appearance in myth, the wedding of Pirithous, king of the Lapiths. Pirithous, himself part divine, invites the centaurs to his wedding feast. It starts as a grand, civilized affair. The great hall is filled with the smell of roasting meat and fine wine. The centaurs, initially, are on their best behavior, reclining on couches specially built for their unique forms. They use their human hands to eat from platters, engaging in conversation. But as the wine flows, the atmosphere changes. The scent of sweat and horse grows stronger. Their laughter becomes louder, coarser. The delicate balance tips. The centaur Everytion, drunk and emboldened, seizes the bride Hippodamia by her hair, attempting to carry her off. It's the spark in a room full of gunpowder. In an instant, the wedding feast explodes into a riot of unprecedented violence. This isn't a battle. It's a bar fight on a mythological scale. Centaurs, their minds lost to wine, begin grabbing women, smashing furniture, and using their hooves as weapons. They don't have swords or spears. They use what they have. They rip the legs from tables to use as clubs. They hurl entire platters of food. They grab heavy bronze amphorae and bring them down on lapith heads. The lapiths fight back with the weapons of men. The sound is a horrific symphony of smashing pottery, splintering wood, screaming women, and the enraged bellows of centaurs. The centaur Riddle smashes a stone lamp into a man's face. Another centaur, Amicus, tears down the very decorations of the hall to use as a weapon. The air grows thick with the smell of blood, spilled wine, and the pungent odor of panicked horse. The heroes Theseus, who is a guest, and Pirithous lead the lapith counterattack. It becomes a brutal, close-quarters brawl. Theseus wrestles a centaur to the ground, avoiding the crushing hooves, and drives a dagger into its human torso. The centaurs, for all their strength, are disorganized and drunk. They are driven from the hall, out into the night, and pursued by the enraged lapiths in a conflict that would be remembered for generations. The battle of the lapiths and centaurs becomes a quintessential Greek metaphor for the victory of civilization over barbarism, of order over chaos. But it's not that simple, because even in their defeat, the centaurs don't vanish. They retreat to their mountain fastnesses, a constant looming reminder of the wildness that lies just beyond the city walls. They are the other, the untamed wilderness that civilization must always defend against, but can never truly eradicate. And then there is Chiron, the noble one, living his life in tragic contrast to his kin. His story ends not in a drunken brawl, but in a moment of profound, accidental tragedy. His friend, the hero Heracles, is visiting him. They are examining Heracles' arrows, which the hero has tipped with the venomous blood of the Lernaean Hydra. One of the arrows, by terrible chance, slips and scratches Chiron's leg. The pain is instant and excruciating, a burning, acidic agony that no poultice or herb can soothe. But Chiron is immortal. He cannot die. He is condemned to an eternity of suffering, trapped in a body that writhes in unending pain. The wisest, gentlest of his kind is tortured by a weapon created to kill a monster. In the end, a deal is struck. Prometheus, the Titan who stole fire for humanity, is also immortal and being punished. Zeus agrees to allow Chiron to trade his immortality for Prometheus's freedom. Chiron willingly chooses to die, to surrender his eternal life to escape the unbearable pain. He descends to the underworld, not as a punished soul, but as a respected one. The centaurs, as a race, fade from prominence after these events, becoming more a symbol than a real threat. They represent the dual nature within humanity itself, the constant tug-of-war between the intellect in our heads and the instincts in our blood. They are the wild heart that beats beneath the skin of civilization, a reminder that we are all, in some way, a hybrid creature, forever trying to balance the man and the beast. The centaurs showed us the wildness that walks on four legs, the struggle between reason and instinct that plays out in mountain forests and wedding halls. But there are other creatures who rule different domains, the treacherous air above and the unforgiving sea below. They are not monsters of physical strength, but of psychological torment, weaponizing hunger and desire in ways that break the spirit long before the body fails. These are the stories of the Harpies and the Sirens. First, to the court of King Phineus in Thrace. This is not a place of celebration, but of a slow, maddening punishment. The air in the great hall is thick, but not with the smell of feast or incense. It smells of dust, decay, and a deeper, more personal kind of rot. Phineas, a seer blessed with foresight, made the fatal error of revealing too many of Zeus's secrets. His punishment is uniquely cruel. He is trapped in his own palace, surrounded by tables laden with food, yet perpetually on the verge of starvation. The moment a meal is placed before him, you hear it, a sudden rush of wings, a chaotic flapping that seems to come from every direction at once. The Harpies have arrived. Their name means the Snatchers, and they are the personification of storm winds that suddenly rob the land of its bounty. They are daughters of the ancient sea god Thalmas and the ocean nymph Electra, sisters to Iris, the rainbow messenger. But there is nothing beautiful or orderly about them. They are hideous bird-like creatures with the faces of haggard, starving women, pale and twisted with perpetual hunger. Their hair is a matted, greasy mess. Their bodies are those of vast vultures, with wings dark and ragged, feathers perpetually ruffled, as if by a violent gale. Their claws are long, curved, and caked with filth. They don't land gracefully. They descend in a shrieking, chaotic whirlwind, their wings beating up clouds of dust and debris. The sound is a cacophony of shrill, woman-like screams and the raw screech of a carrion bird. They dive towards Phineas's table. With their filthy claws, they don't just steal the food. They defile it. They snatch up loaves of bread, joints of meat, and ripe fruits, but what they don't carry off, they claw at, spit on, and befoul with a disgusting, oily excrement that smells of death and sour things. In seconds, the feast is transformed into a reeking, inedible mess. Then, as suddenly as they came, they are gone, their shrieks fading into the distance, leaving Phineas alone with his gnawing hunger and the putrid evidence of his powerlessness. This is his eternal cycle. Anticipation, violation, despair. He sits amidst the stench, a broken king in a gilded cage. His punishment not a single act of violence, but an endless, torturous repetition. He is not being killed. He is being unmade, meal by stolen meal. His story intersects with that of the Argonauts. Jason and his crew, on their quest for the Golden Fleece, come to Phineas seeking guidance. The king promises them the prophecies they need, but only if they can free him from his winged tormentors. The Argonauts agree. They set a trap. They lay out a final tempting feast for Phineas and hide two of their fastest heroes, the winged sons of Boreas, Zetes, and Calais. The scene repeats. The food is laid. The Harpies descend in their shrieking whirlwind. But as they begin their foul work, the Boreads leap from their hiding place, swords drawn. A spectacular aerial chase ensues. The Harpies, shrieking in outrage and fear, flee through the sky. The twin heroes close on their heels. They are pursued across the seas until, exhausted and cornered, the Harpies are spared on the condition they never torment Phineas again. They retreat to a remote cave on the Strophodes Islands. Their primary role is divine instruments of punishment complete, but their nature as symbols of sudden, devastating loss forever cemented. They are the storm that ruins the harvest, the unexpected disaster that snatches prosperity away, leaving only ruin and a foul smell behind. Now let the wind carry us from the stench of a defiled feast to a different, more seductive kind of hunger. Far from the rocky coast of Thrace, on an island lost in the misty, sun-drenched waters of the Mediterranean, another danger waits. The approach is deceptively beautiful. The water is a calm, crystalline blue. The air is warm and still. The island itself is green and inviting. And then you hear it. Faint at first, a thread of sound woven into the sigh of the waves and the whisper of the breeze. It is music. But not just music. It is the most achingly beautiful, perfectly harmonized sound a human soul can conceive. It is a melody that seems to speak directly to your deepest desires, your most secret ambitions, your fondest memories. It is the sound of pure, unadulterated longing given voice. These are the sirens. Unlike the grotesque harpies, their appearance is often left to the imagination, making them even more potent. Sometimes they are depicted as birds with the heads of women, creatures of the air like the harpies, but focused on a different kind of theft. In later art, they become beautiful women, sometimes with the tails of fish, luring sailors not with ugliness, but with impossible perfection. But their true form is their song. It is a psychological snare, a weaponized piece of art. Their island is not surrounded by sharp rocks and treacherous currents by accident. Those are the results of their power. The beaches are littered with the bleached bones and sun-bleached ships of those who came before. These sailors heard the song and were compelled to steer towards it, ignoring the helmsman, tearing the sails until their ships were dashed to splinters on the rocks. They then either drowned or, stranded on the island, starved to death, unable to leave the source of the music, forever listening until they died. The sirens don't attack. They don't need to. Their victims willingly destroy themselves for a closer listen. They offer not just a song, but a promise. They sing, "Come closer, famous Odysseus, mankind's glory, and listen to our song. We know everything that happens on the fertile earth." They offer total knowledge, the answer to every question, the fulfillment of every intellectual curiosity. For Odysseus, the man of twists and turns, this is the ultimate temptation. Warned by the sorceress Circe, he knows the danger. He orders his men to plug their ears with beeswax, so they can hear nothing but the beat of their own hearts. But he, desperate to hear the song, has himself tied tightly to the mast of the ship, with strict orders not to be released no matter how much he begs and struggles. As the ship passes the island, the song hits him. It is even more powerful than he imagined. It promises him glory, knowledge, and end all his wandering. He fights against his bonds, his eyes wild, screaming at his men to untie him, to steer the ship towards the heavenly sound. He threatens, he pleads, he struggles until the ropes cut into his skin. But his crew, deaf to the song and loyal to their orders, only tie him tighter and row harder. They physically carry him past the island, past the point of temptation, while he writhes in an agony of desire. It is one of the most vivid depictions of a man being tortured by his own intellect, by his own insatiable curiosity. For the sirens represent the danger of forbidden knowledge, the temptation that leads to stagnation and death. To listen to them is to stop your journey, to become so captivated by the promise of understanding that you never actually live. In another version, the Argonauts also pass the sirens, but they have a secret weapon. Orpheus, the greatest musician of all. As the sirens begin their lethal song, Orpheus takes up his lyre and plays a counter-melody, a tune so powerful, so joyful, so full of life that it drowns out the sirens' deadly harmony. The crew, captivated by Orpheus's music, rows on unharmed. The sirens, defeated, are so humiliated that they throw themselves into the sea and are transformed into rocks. Both the harpies and the sirens are creatures of persuasion, not force. One uses foulness to enforce a divine punishment. The other uses sublime beauty to enact a personal one. One makes sustenance impossible. The other makes progress impossible. They are two sides of the same coin. The external forces that can rob a life of its meaning, whether by taking away its physical nourishment, or by offering a spiritual nourishment that is, in the end, a poison. The Harpies and Sirens showed us how temptation and torment can weaponize the very air and sea, preying on the mind's weaknesses. But some creatures need no such subtlety. They are the final sentinels, the ultimate obstacles placed by gods at the thresholds of the impossible, the gates of death, the paths to legendary treasures, the lairs of impossible horrors. They are pure, unadulterated power given monstrous form, the last thing a hero sees before victory or a gruesome end. These are the stories of Cerberus, the Chimera, and Ladin. Let's start at the end of all things. The river Styx isn't a river you can see with living eyes. It flows through a landscape of gray mist and silent shades, the air cold and carrying the faint, collective whisper of a billion forgotten memories. The ground is soft gray ash, and nothing grows. The only notable feature is a great, black gate, wrought from something harder than iron, that seems to absorb what little light exists in this place. And before this gate, there is movement. A shape, massive and dark, shifts in the perpetual twilight. You hear the sound first, not one growl, but three, layered over each other in a dissonant chord of pure menace. This is Cerberus, the hound of Hades. He is not a pet. He is the final, physical barrier between the world of the living and the realm of the dead. His mother is Echidna, the she-viper, and his father is Typhon, the storm giant, making him a sibling to other horrors like the Nemean lion and the Lernaean Hydra. He is a dog, but a dog as conceived by a nightmare. He is enormous, the size of a large cottage, with a coat so dark it seems to be made of solidified shadow. And he has 3 heads. Each head is that of a ferocious mastiff, with eyes that glow like dying embers and jaws that can crush bronze. Saliva, thick and acidic, drips from 3 sets of fangs, sizzling where it hits the ashen ground. Around his neck, instead of fur, a mane of live, hissing snakes rides and snaps at the air. His tail is not a tail, but a massive venomous serpent, its own head raised and ready to strike. The sound of his breathing is a 3-part rhythm of low, rumbling growls. His purpose is simple: to prevent the living from entering the underworld, and to prevent the dead from leaving. He is the consummate bouncer for the afterlife. To look upon him is to understand the finality of death. This is the creature Heracles must subdue for his 12th and final labor. The task is not to kill Cerberus, but to bring him alive to the surface world. Heracles, prepared by his previous labors, knows he cannot defeat this beast with force alone. He is guided by the gods. Athena and Hermes lead him to the underworld's entrance. He confronts Hades himself, who gives permission for the attempt on one condition. Heracles must master the hound without using any weapons. So, armed with only his lion skin cloak and his godlike strength, Heracles approaches the gate. The 3 heads turn in unison, 6 glowing eyes fixing on him. The growls deepen. The serpent tail rises, hissing. Heracles moves with a speed born of desperation. He throws himself at the beast, wrapping his arms around its thrashing necks. It is a wrestling match of epic proportions. Cerberus's claws tear at the earth, throwing up clouds of gray ash. The snake tail strikes, again and again, but its fangs cannot penetrate the Nemean lion's hide. The 3 heads snap and snarl, their hot, foul breath washing over Heracles. But he holds on, squeezing, using his weight to bear the monstrous dog to the ground. He doesn't strangle it into submission. He overwhelms it with pure, relentless pressure until the great hound, for the first time in its existence, is subdued. Heracles then chains it, not with iron, but with adamantine, and drags the stunned, confused beast up to the world of the living. The sight of sunlight, the smell of green things, the sensation of warm air, it all terrifies the creature of the gloom. When Heracles presents it to a horrified King Eurystheus, the king, hiding in his bronze jar as usual, begs him to take it back. And so, Cerberus is returned to his post at the gates of Hades, the only hero to ever best him and live to tell the tale. From the silent realm of the dead, we travel to the fiery, violent hills of Lycia. The air here is hot and dry, tasting of sulfur and ash. The ground is rocky and barren, and the local villages live in a state of perpetual terror. Their scourge is the Chimera. She is another offspring of Typhon and Echidna, a hybrid so unnatural she defies logic. She is not a blend, but a patchwork of 3 distinct, terrifying creatures. She has the body and head of a powerful lion, its mane singed and smoking. But sprouting from her back is the head and neck of a goat, its eyes glazed with a peculiar malice, bleating sounds that are somehow predatory. And where a tail should be, there is the head and body of a massive serpent, its scales iridescent, and its fangs dripping with a fast-acting venom. But her most famous weapon is her breath. The lion's mouth doesn't just roar. It breathes a continuous rolling wave of fire. When she attacks, it's not a coordinated assault from three brains, but a chaotic, three-pronged storm of destruction. The lion's claws rend and tear, the goat's horns gore and batter, and the serpent's head strikes from an unexpected angle, injecting its lethal poison. And all the while, the fire breath scorches the earth, turning fields to glass and incinerating anyone who comes near. She is a walking, breathing catastrophe. The hero Bellerophon is tasked with killing her, but he knows a direct assault is suicide. His advantage is the winged horse, Pegasus, born from Medusa's blood. From the air, Bellerophon can avoid the Chimera's ground-based chaos and her fire. The battle is a deadly dance in the sky. The Chimera, enraged, rears up, blasting columns of fire towards the soaring horse and rider. Bellerophon, guiding Pegasus with skill, dodges the flames. He rains down arrows on the monster, but they bounce off its thick hide or are burned to ash mid-air. Finally, he gets a clever idea. He takes a large block of lead and fixes it to the tip of his spear. He then flies directly at the Chimera, provoking it to open its mouth and breathe fire. As the torrent of flame erupts, Bellerophon hurls the spear, not at the beast's body, but into its open mouth. The lead-tipped spear flies into the fiery throat. The intense heat instantly melts the lead, which pours down the Chimera's gullet, solidifying in its lungs and vital organs, suffocating the beast from the inside out. It's a death of horrific internal solidification. The monster thrashes and dies, a victim of its own greatest weapon, finally to a place of serene, protected beauty. The Garden of the Hesperides, on the western edge of the world, is a paradise. The air is perpetually golden with the light of the setting sun. Fruit trees heavy with impossible produce grow in perfect rows, and the scent of flowers and ripening fruit is intoxicating. And in the center of this garden grows a single magnificent tree with leaves of shimmering green and apples of solid glowing gold. These are the golden apples of the Hesperides, a wedding gift from Gaia to Hera. To protect this divine orchard, Hera placed an immortal dragon named Ladon. He is not a ferocious, fire-breathing beast like the Chimera. He is a creature of a different, more ancient order. He is colossal, his body coiled endlessly around the base of the golden apple tree, so intertwined with its roots that he seems to be part of the tree itself. His most stunning feature is his heads. He has 100 of them, and unlike the Hydra's heads, which are all hostility, each of Ladon's heads is awake, aware, and serene. They don't hiss in unison. They speak, whisper, and sing in 100 different languages and tones, a constant, soft, multilingual murmur that fills the garden. Their eyes are not filled with rage, but with an ancient, weary wisdom. They see everything in every direction at all times. There is no sneaking past Ladon. He is the perfect, patient, immortal watchman. He doesn't need to be aggressive, because his mere presence is an insurmountable defense. He is the obstacle that cannot be overcome by force, only by trickery. This is the creature Heracles must confront for his 11th labor. He cannot fight Ladon. To do so would be to incur the eternal wrath of Hera. Instead, he seeks out the Titan Atlas, who holds up the sky at the edge of the world, and whose daughters, the Hesperides, tend the garden. Heracles offers to hold the weight of the heavens for a moment, if Atlas will retrieve the apples for him. Atlas, glad for a respite, agrees. He enters the garden, and being the father of the Nymphs, is allowed to pass. He simply plucks the apples and brings them to Heracles. The hero, with the sky crushing his shoulders, then uses his wits to convince Atlas to take the weight back, promising to deliver the apples for him. He walks away, apples in hand, having never fought the guardian at all. Ladin remains, coiled and watchful, his 100 heads still murmuring, his task technically unviolated. In some versions, Heracles does slay Ladin, but it feels like a violation of the creature's peaceful, eternal purpose. These 3 final guardians represent the ultimate tests. Cerberus is the test of pure, raw courage and strength in the face of finality. The Chimera is the test of ingenuity against overwhelming, chaotic power. And Ladin is the test of wit and persuasion against an obstacle that cannot be directly challenged. They are the last gates before the prizes of legend, the final, monstrous expressions of a world where every treasure, every secret, every passage has its price and its protector. The great guardian Cerberus, the Chimera, Ladin represent the monumental, almost architectural obstacles of the mythic world. But for every famous monster that challenged a hero, there were dozens of lesser-known horrors that plagued the countryside, terrorized villages, and made daily life an exercise in survival. These creatures didn't guard golden apples or the gates of hell. They ruined crops, killed livestock, and turned simple travel into a nightmare. They were the background noise of terror in ancient Greece, the local problems that required local solutions, sometimes from the most famous heroes of all. These are the stories of the Stymphalian birds, the Crommyonian sow, and the Tumessian fox. Let's begin in a place that should be tranquil, Lake Stymphalia in Arcadia. But this is no idyllic watering hole. The lake is surrounded by dense marshy woodlands, where the air hangs heavy and still, thick with the smell of stagnant water and decaying reeds. The surface of the lake is clogged with algae, and the trees are strangely bare, their branches skeletal against the gray sky. And then you hear it a sound like 1,000 sheets of bronze being shaken at once, a metallic, clattering, shrieking cacophony that grates on the ears and sets the teeth on edge. This is the sound of the Stymphalian birds. They are not normal birds. They are man-eating creatures, about the size of cranes, but with beaks of sharp, durable bronze. Their wings are not feathered with normal plumage, but with sharp, metallic quills that they can launch like arrows. Their droppings are so toxic they can poison the land and water, which is why the area around the lake is a blighted wasteland. They are relentless, aggressive, and countless in number, a swirling, shrieking storm of beaks and blades that have driven the local population to the brink. This is the 6th labor of Heracles, to rid the region of these metallic menaces. The problem is their habitat. The marshy ground around the lake is too soft to support a man's weight, so Heracles cannot wade in and confront them directly. He stands at the edge of the bog, the metallic shrieking assaulting his ears, and ponders the problem. Then, a gift from his patron goddess, Athena. She gives him a pair of gigantic bronze castanets, forged by the god Hephaestus. Heracles, no musician, climbs to a high vantage point overlooking the marsh. He raises the castanets and claps them together. The sound is unbelievable, a single percussive crack that echoes across the lake, a sound so loud and sharp it momentarily drowns out the birds shrieking. The birds, startled and terrified by the unnatural noise, erupt from the trees in a massive, chaotic cloud. They swirl into the air, a storm of bronze feathers and panicked cries. As they fly up, exposed and disoriented, Heracles goes to work. He raises his bow, and with his unerring aim, picks them off one by one. The thwip of his bowstring and the subsequent clang of his arrow striking a bronze beak or breastplate becomes a grim rhythm. Those he doesn't shoot flee in terror, never to return to the Stymphalian marsh. The land, in time, begins to heal. It's a labor that showcases not just strength, but the application of a simple, clever solution to a pervasive environmental problem. From the metallic horror of the marshes, we travel to the dusty roads near Crommyon, on the Isthmus of Corinth. Here, the terror is terrestrial, brutish, and personal. The land is farm country, or it was, before she arrived. She is Phia, the Crommyonian sow. She is not merely a large pig. She is a monstrous wild sow of immense size and ferocity, as formidable as any great beast. Some say she was the offspring of Typhon and Echidna, placing her in the same horrific family as Cerberus and the Chimera. She is a hulking mass of muscle and bristles, with sharp, curved tusks that can gut a man or a cow with a single swipe. Her eyes are small, red, and filled with a mindless, destructive rage. She doesn't just hunt for food. She destroys for the sake of destruction. She tramples fields of grain into mud, uproots olive trees, and kills farmers who try to defend their land. The air around Cromyon smells of overturned earth, blood, and the pungent, musky odor of the great beast herself. She is a force of pure agricultural chaos. The hero who confronts her is the young Theseus, on his journey from Trozen to Athens. While Heracles faced global-scale labors, Theseus was dealing with the local pests that infested the road. The Crommyonian sow was one of his first major challenges. The confrontation is direct and visceral. There is no trickery, no magical castanets. Theseus, armed with his sword and shield, seeks out the beast in her lair. He finds her in a trampled field, her snout caked with dirt and blood. She charges him without warning, a roaring, bristling avalanche of fury. The fight is short, brutal, and messy. Theseus stands his ground, using his shield to deflect her tusks, and with a well-placed thrust of his sword, he kills the monstrous sow. It's a victory of raw, heroic courage over a very immediate, very physical threat. He cleanses the road, a local boy solving a local problem, a preview of the great hero he would become. Finally, we come to a problem of a different nature, one that couldn't be solved by sword or arrow. In the region of Thebes, a different kind of creature plagued the people. This was the Tumessian fox. It was no ordinary fox. It was a gigantic fox, sent by the gods, possibly Dionysus, as a punishment to Thebes. Its nature was its defense. It was destined never to be caught. It was uncatchable. It would descend upon the countryside, snatching children and livestock from their homes and fields, and no matter how many hunters or heroes were sent after it, it always escaped. You could see it, a flash of red fur and a mocking glance over its shoulder as it vanished into the landscape. It was a ghost, a rumor, a persistent, unstoppable drain on the city's morale and resources. The Thebans were at their wits' end. They couldn't kill what they couldn't catch. So they brought in a specialist, a hunting dog Lelaps. This was no ordinary dog either. It was a magical hound, fated to always catch its prey. It was the ultimate predator, a gift from Zeus to Europa. So the scene is set. The uncatchable fox versus the unfailing hound. It is the ultimate paradox, a collision of two absolute, contradictory destinies. The hunt begins. The fox flees, a red streak across the hills. The dog follows, relentless, always closing the distance. They race across the entire Theban countryside, through fields and forests, across streams and over mountains. The fox, by its nature, cannot be caught. The dog, by its nature, cannot fail to catch it. They are locked in an eternal, impossible chase, a perfect loop of pursuit and escape that could logically never end. The universe itself couldn't resolve this logical impasse. And so Zeus, looking down on this absurd and endless contest, finally intervenes. He cannot allow two contradictory fates to unravel reality. In a moment of divine problem-solving, he turns both creatures to stone. Then, for good measure, he catastrophizes them. He places their stone forms in the sky as the constellations Canis Major, Lelaps, and either Vulpecula or a part of Canis Minor, the Tumessian fox. The chase continues forever, frozen in the stars, a celestial monument to an unsolvable problem. These three creatures, the metallic birds, the destructive sow, the uncatchable fox, show us the breadth of the Greek monstrous world. Not every challenge was a Hydra or a Minotaur. Some were environmental hazards, some were brutal nuisances, and some were philosophical puzzles, even flesh and fur. They remind us that in the ancient world, heroism wasn't just about conquering the grand and the epic. It was also about clearing the road, protecting the farm, and sometimes accepting that some problems are so perfect they can only be resolved by turning them into stars. The great monsters and local horrors we've met so far had defined forms: snake-haired Gorgons, 100-headed dragons, triple-bodied hounds. But the Greek world was also populated by beings of a different order, creatures whose very essence was change, whose forms were as fluid as the rivers they inhabited, or as fleeting as the echoes they inspired. These were the shapeshifters and the nature spirits, the beings that blurred the line between person and place, reminding everyone that the world itself was alive, conscious, and capable of wearing 1,000 different faces. This is the story of the Nymphs, the Satyrs, and the ultimate master of change, Proteus. Let's start deep in a forest, far from any road. The air is cool and dappled with green-gold light filtering through a canopy of ancient oaks. You can smell the rich, damp earth, the sharp scent of pine, and the sweet perfume of hidden wildflowers. A stream trickles over smooth, gray stones, its sound a constant, gentle chatter. This isn't just a forest. It is the domain of the dryads, the nymphs of the trees. They are not gods, but powerful nature spirits, each one bound to a specific tree: an oak, a poplar, a pine. If you stand very still, you might see one. Not a full apparition, but a flicker of movement where bark seems to smooth into skin. A face peering from behind a trunk that wasn't there a second before. A whisper that might be the wind or might be a voice. They are shy, these spirits, but fiercely protective. To harm their tree is to harm them. An axe biting into their oak is felt as a searing pain in their own side. They are the soul of the forest, and their mood is the forest's mood. When they dance in moonlit clearings, the air itself feels joyous. When they mourn a fallen sister, the whole woods seem to weep, the leaves drooping, the streams running slower. Then there are the naiads, the nymphs of fresh water. Find a secluded spring, one where the water bubbles up crystal clear from a bed of white pebbles. The air here is moist and cool. Kneel down to drink, and you might see her reflection in the water just before your own. A woman with hair, the color of flowing water, and skin that shimmers with a submerged light. She is the spring. Her life is tied to its flow. If the spring dries up, she dies. She can be benevolent, offering clean water and prophetic whispers to those who respect her. But cross her, pollute her waters, and her kindness can turn to a drowning rage. She can pull the unwary under with a strength that belies her delicate appearance, holding them in the cold, silent depth until their struggles cease. These spirits are everywhere: in the mountains, the Oreads, in the meadows, the Limonides, in the sea, the Nereids and Oceanids. They are the personalized consciousness of the natural world, the explanation for why a particular grove feels sacred, why a certain cave seems to watch you, why a specific stretch of coast feels so alive. They are the reason the ancient Greeks felt they were never truly alone in the wilderness. And where there are nymphs, there are often satyrs. If the nymphs are the graceful, feminine spirit of nature, the satyrs are its raw, masculine, and untamed ID. You hear them before you see them, the sound of crude flutes, the altos, raucous laughter, and the clatter of hooves on rocks. They are followers of Dionysus, the god of wine and ecstasy. From the waist up, they are men, but with rough, animalistic features, snub noses, and pointed ears. From the waist down, they are goats, with furry haunches and cloven hooves. They are perpetually drunk, perpetually lustful, and perpetually ready for a party. They are not evil, but they are uncontrollable. They represent the wild, instinctual joy that civilization tries to temper. To meet a satyr in the woods is to be dragged into a dance, to have a wineskin thrust into your hands, to be swept up in a frenzy of music and movement that forgets all about tomorrow's responsibilities. They are the embodiment of the forest's wild party, the chaotic counterpoint to the nymph's serene beauty. But for the ultimate expression of fluidity, we must go to the sea. Not the sunny surface, but the isolated, sun-baked shore of the island of Pharos, where the seals bask on the rocks, and the air smells of salt, sun-bleached stone, and fish. This is the home of Proteus, the old man of the sea. He is a primordial seer, a herdsman of Poseidon's seals. He knows all things past, present, and future, but he has no desire to share his knowledge. To get a prophecy from him, you must catch him. And this is the challenge. Proteus is the master of change. He can shift his form into anything: a lion, a snake, a tree, a stream of water, a gust of wind, even fire. To wrest the truth from him, you must hold on while he cycles through every form in existence. The hero Menelaus, stranded on his journey home from the Trojan War, must do exactly this. On the advice of the sea nymph Idothea, Proteus's own daughter, Menelaus and his men wait for the old god to emerge from the sea at noon to count his seals and take his nap. They ambush him. The moment they grab him, the struggle begins. It is not a physical fight so much as a battle of perception and will. One moment, Menelaus is holding the arm of an old man. The next, the arm becomes the powerful, muscular limb of a lion, and a roar fills the air. He holds on. The lion melts into a slithering, powerful boa constrictor, coiling around his body, squeezing the breath from his lungs. He holds on. The snake dissolves into a torrent of cold, fresh water, rushing through his fingers. He holds on. The water freezes into a block of solid ice, burning his hands with cold. He holds on. The ice vaporizes into a roaring pillar of fire, the heat blistering his skin. He holds on. The fire condenses into a towering leafy tree, its roots grasping the earth. He holds on. Proteus shifts through a dizzying, terrifying parade of forms: a panther, a wild boar, a flock of birds, a crawling insect. Each transformation is accompanied by the sound and smell of the new form: the musky scent of a big cat, the damp smell of reptile, the clean scent of water, the searing heat of flame. It is a full sensory assault designed to break the hero's concentration and grip. But Menelaus, desperate for the knowledge to get home, endures. He holds on through the terrifying, beautiful, nauseating kaleidoscope of existence. Finally, exhausted from the effort, Proteus reverts to his original form. The struggle is over. He sits on the rock, an old, tired sea god, and answers Menelaus's questions, telling him the sacrifices he must make to the gods to secure a safe passage home. This shapeshifting is the most profound expression of a core Greek belief: that the world is not static, that reality is fluid, that a tree can have a spirit, a stream can have a mood, and an old man can be a lion, a flame, and a river, all in the space of a single minute. The nymphs, satyrs, and Proteus complete the picture. The great monsters were the defined challenges, the obstacles with clear forms. But these beings were the background magic, the ever-shifting context in which all those stories took place. They were the whisper in the leaves, the laughter in the vineyard, the impossible, changing skin of the sea itself. They remind us that for the ancient Greeks, the world was not a collection of things, but a community of beings, some fixed in their horror and others forever flowing forever, changing forever, escaping any attempt to pin them down.